Welcome, everybody. We'll get started momentarily. Get started in just a moment. Okay, I think we'll get started. Thanks for joining the May 2024 edition of Green Infrastructure, Climate, and Cities. For those of you joining for the first time, this is a monthly seminar series put on by CCRUN, the Consortium for Climate Risks in the Urban Northeast, which is a NOAA-funded consortium of universities focusing on the impacts of climate change in Northeast cities and what we can do about it. And my name is Franco Montalto. I'm one of the CCRUN PIs. This series has been going on for a number of years now, and you can go to the CCRUN website to see any of our previous webinars. These webinars have been live cast, recorded, saved, and archived, and they're available for download on the CCRUN website. We give continuing education credits for professional engineers and have a different topic each month. So this month, we'd like to welcome Katie Kahn from Rutgers University, who has been running the Community Climate Resilience Grant Program of CCRUN. And she's going to be introducing today's seminar, which includes grant awardees from a variety of community-based organizations throughout the Northeast: GreenRoots, Groundwork Elizabeth, Groundwork Hudson Valley, and Eastwick United. And each of these organizations will have an opportunity to introduce themselves and their work. So as a reminder, please use the Q&A button to submit questions. We'll have opportunities for questions after each of the presentations, and then we'll have a general conversation at the end, time permitting. And with that, I will stop sharing and hand it off to Katie Kahn, who will give us some background on the program and introduce our first speaker.
Thanks so much, Franco. All right, so I'm just going to share my screen. There we go. So as Franco said, my name is Katie Kahn, and I am at Rutgers University and serve as the Community Climate Resilience Grant Competitions Coordinator for CCRUN. So I'm thrilled today to be here with you and hear from all of our wonderful grantee partners about all the work that they've been doing with us over the last year or so. So just to give a brief overview before jumping into presentations of the CCR grant program. This was launched in the summer of 2022, and we awarded 4 community-based organizations a one-year grant of $25,000. Each grant recipient partnered with one of our CCRUN PIs based in the region that they work. So we kind of partnered universities with nearby community-based organizations to try to form some relationships between these universities and these organizations doing work on the ground, provide new access to data, and other networks that universities might be able to provide. Over the course of these projects, the grantees have co-developed deliverables with their university partners, and we're lucky enough to hear from them all today about the stories and what they've been working on the ground in the last couple of years. And lastly, I just wanted to highlight that our program design was guided by a multidimensional equity framework. We were really interested in putting climate justice first within this grant program, trying to break down some barriers that often exist within grant programs, and also to build capacity across our region. All right, so just as a way of brief introduction, I'm not going to spend too much time because we have everybody here with us today to talk about their work, but our grantees are spread throughout the Northeast. starting up in the north with GreenRoots, who are based in Chelsea, Massachusetts, just outside Boston. Moving down, we have Groundwork Hudson Valley and located in Yonkers, New York, and Groundwork Elizabeth, which is located in North Jersey. And then moving down to the Philadelphia area, we have Eastwick United Community Development Corporation. So we were thrilled to hear a little bit more about the initial outcomes of all of these projects, which are briefly described here on the slides. We've seen a whole host of community outreach events, from youth engagement, tree planting, Earth Day celebrations, digital outreach campaigns, heat walks, transformation of the urban environment. So we're really looking forward to hearing a little bit more in depth about these projects. We're lucky that we've been able to see some major institutional connections and opportunities for further grants through this one initial grant program. We've had some of our grantee partners connected with other institutions, including university, for further funding opportunities to further the projects that you'll hear about today and others. And I just want to point out that some of our groups have wrapped up their projects and have reported out already. And those there's more information on our website, which I'll paste in the chat, but the link is also up here if anybody's interested in reading more about these projects as they conclude. We'll have all that information on our website. So just to briefly go over our agenda, we'll have 4 groups present in this order. We're starting with GreenRoots, Groundwork Hudson Valley, Groundwork Elizabeth, and then Eastwick United. And then we'll have a moderated panel just after 5, where we'll hear from everybody together to just kind of discuss what we heard in the presentations and reflect on the broader experiences of the grant program. And then by 5:30, we hope to open it up to broad questions from the audience. So as Franco mentioned, I'd encourage folks to keep on putting your questions into the Q&A within Zoom. And we're looking forward to a robust conversation at the end of the programming here. Also, if you have any direct questions for the groups as they're presenting, feel free to stick those in the chat or the Q&A, and we will have each group respond, hopefully for like about 5 minutes after they're done with their presentations. All right, so with that, I'd like to welcome Jack Segovia, who's a Climate Justice Fellow with GreenRoots, to start us off. So I'll stop sharing and have Jack begin.
Hello, thank you, Franco and Katie. So my name is Jack, and I'm going to be talking about GreenRoots and our cool blog. So let me share my screen. Okay, perfect. So today I'm going to be talking about the 212 Congress Avenue lot, also known as the Blooming Park and Community Space, and a cool block collaboration work. To start off, I'm going to give a few background information on Chelsea, which, as Katie mentioned, is outside of Boston. And so it's the smallest city within the state of Massachusetts, with just 2 square miles, but it's the most densely populated, with more than 50,000 residents, which more than 50, or around, I believe, 79 identify as people of color, and more than 20 fall below the federal poverty line. And as we can see here, some statistics on East Boston, pretty similar demographics to Chelsea. A bit more on Chelsea, 100% of jet fuel for the Logan Airport is stored in Chelsea, as well as 80% of the region's heating fuel, gasoline for thousands of gas stations along the Mid-Atlantic, as well as road salt for around 350 cities across New England. Chelsea is also the home for the largest produce distribution warehouse in the nation, one of the largest, and is also on top of the industries that they have Chelsea as home. There's also very critically essential bridges and tunnels that lead to diesel spewing vehicles to transit through the community. Keep it on Chelsea, we can see that 80% of the city is impervious surfaces, so that meaning asphalt, pavement and concrete, and like though out of the 80%, 4% out of the 100%, 4% breaks into public green spaces, 2% into tree canopy, and this is an example of how Chelsea is a city where there's environmental injustice. So who is GreenRoots and what do we do? So our mission is to improve and enhance the urban environment and public health through community engagement, community empowerment, youth leadership, and campaigns that are focused on improving the quality of life for the city of Chelsea and neighbor communities as well. Few more of the things that we do. Over the past 30 years, we have worked to restore more than 2 acres of urban salt marsh. We've created parks. We have advocated and implemented waterfront walkways, educational signages, access to the shoreline. We've also worked to improve the water quality along the Chelsea Creek. And we've discussed with adjacent communities to come to consensus of best management practices that improve the water quality and reduce environmental and health burdens for adjacent communities, as well as for Chelsea. To talk about some of our partnerships, we have partnered with CHEAT, which stands for the Chelsea East Boston Heat Study, a group of researchers from the Boston University School of Public Health. And we have partnered with them to study indoor and outdoor air quality, as well as different social and environmental stressors, such as street lighting, to food insecurity. All the data that's being collected from this study and researchers is being shared widely with the community. We want to be a source of information, and everything that's collected goes into the website that we are seeing here on the slide, and is shared, is available, it's publicly available. So what have we done with them? In the summer of 2020, we started the Cool Block project, where after the researchers from CHEAT found that areas with trees, grass, water are generally cooler compared to areas that are more densely populated and have pavement surfaces. As we can see here on my left, well, on the left of the screen, there's this heat sensor placement that was on 2022. There's a map where we can see where the areas are more, they're hotter within the city as well as in East Boston. And then on the bottom, we can see a person installing a heat sensor on one of the trees. And then on the right, we can see the Cool Block and some of the work that I will be touching on later slides. So this is another example of the Cool Block, of the heat sensors in trees. So the Cool Block was chosen purposely by looking at extensive and existing data from the city of Chelsea, as well as data collected by CHEAT and GreenRoots. And the area of the Cool Block is located right there where the arrow points. And this area was not only chosen because of high heat index, but because also this neighborhood is very densely populated, which means that there's the most need due to the lack of local resources and amenities. This is also a very diverse neighborhood with an Islamic cultural religious center. There's also a Boys and Girls Club, and it's just a very dense and diverse neighborhood, and it was chosen purposely because of that reason. So this is a photo of the block. It goes from one corner to the other. And as we can see on the later photo, it was a vacant parking lot that was paved in gravel space. And according to neighbors, we learned that this space was underutilized for the past 10 years. We had conversations with the owner and agreed to let us use the space to talk with community members and see what they would envision and what they would like to see this space to become. So we worked with the Boston Society of Landscape Architects to collect information on the community around the Cool Block area to see what they wanted to see of this space, to visualize how the park could look like in this space, and also to understand the priorities and needs of the people who reside along this community. We also held different youth focus groups that were meant with the purpose of having community members designing this space and what it could contain. These are Chelsea residents as well, youth who are Chelsea residents. So we started activating the space, and we had different activities that always had an emphasis on health, heat mitigation, and intergeneration activities. We try to include everyone from children to adults and seniors, just so everyone can be involved. We want this space to be welcoming for everyone in the community. And event after event, we saw a lot of investment in the space from community members. Around this time too, the owner donated the lot to the city, and at a really good turnout at a city council meeting, this lot was designated to become a green space and a park. So we have been having activities at this space to build up momentum, to build community. The city is working on funding to make this a permanent park, and here's some examples of events that we've had at this space. We've also added some temporary park elements, and we've used lighter colors to help with light reflection and help with heat mitigation. We've also added plants, seating, and we've held events with representatives from the city to communicate what the neighbors want to see in this space, as well as we've kept residents involved in the process, because we want this to be a collaboration between representatives and community members, because it makes sense that they have a voice in what they want to see in this space. We also worked with youth from the Boys and Girls Club to build knowledge around urban heat islands and environmental justice communities. And they contributed to the temporary installation of the park. And they helped us, as we can see, decorating the park by adding some vibrant colors. They also helped improve seating and clean the space. They wanted to make this space something that was keeping in mind not only more youth, but also children and adults and seniors. So everyone is welcome, as we want this space to be a place where everyone can just come and enjoy the shade. This space has served as an example of advocacy and of a small but mighty environmental justice wins in the community. The 212 Congress lot has been building community climate resilience and has inspired us to plan more cool blocks throughout the city. And we hope to do that through other collaboration and grants as well. This is a work that has been inspired by community members, and it has shown us the power of working together and of coming as a community and communicating what we want to see in these spaces. We are really excited to see the temporary installation of the park and how it can be used for the permanent installation of the park in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, that was great. I'm just curious, so maybe I missed it, but was the park, is it now permanently going to be is it going to be a permanent park going forward?
Yes, it's gonna, we have a temporary installation as of now, but it's gonna be a permanent park. It's on the works right now.
And will your organization own it, or who will own it?
Sorry?
Who will own the park when it's
It's
completed?
under, yes, it's under the city. So the city is the owner, the city of Chelsea is the owner of the lot right now. So I believe it will remain under their ownership.
Public park.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes.
Thanks so much for your presentation. If you have any quick questions for Jacques about this project, please put them in the Q&A. Let's not use the chat because otherwise it's hard to follow. And again, you'll have some chances to ask questions later in the plenary. So if there's no immediate questions, and I don't see any, I'm going to hand it back over to you, Katie, to introduce the next group.
Thanks, Franco. All right, just briefly, I'll just ask Candida Rodriguez, who's the Director of Community Engagement and Communications at Groundwork Hudson Valley. Welcome to share your screen and begin.
Thanks, Katie. Hello, everyone. Let me just set up here. Can everyone see that? Okay.
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Candida Rodriguez, and I am the Director of Community Engagement and Communications at Groundwork Hudson Valley. A little bit about me. I grew up in New York City. However, it wasn't until I started working at Groundwork that I realized that I myself live in an urban heat island. So it's just a small way of how Groundwork has also impacted my own life. So a little bit about Groundwork. We are an environmental justice organization that's part of a larger network, and we're based in Yonkers, New York. Groundwork creates sustainable environmental change in urban neighborhoods through our community-based partnerships that promote equity, youth leadership, and economic opportunity. What we're going to cover today is a little bit about Yonkers, our community resilience project, as well as our community-led climate strategies and action program. So Yonkers is the largest city in Westchester County and the third largest city in the state of New York. It has a population of a little over 200,000, and it is a very diverse and multicultural community that includes many different ethnicities and backgrounds. The Climate Safe Neighborhoods Initiative, which Groundwork Hudson Valley is a part of, is essentially a partnership, is an initiative that brings together Groundwork trusts across the country, which Groundwork Elizabeth, shout out to you guys as well. And what we do through this initiative is to explore the relationship between historical race-based housing segregation and some of the historical racist policies and the current, as well as the predicted impacts of climate change. And through this Climate Safe Neighborhoods initiative, we have been able to really set the foundation and really the launch pad to create our community group, which is called the Climate Safe Yonkers Task Force. And the task force is essentially a community-led coalition and has been active since May 2022. It's made up of approximately 30 diverse members of the community with roots in Yonkers. And what we've done with this community group is to train, educate, and empower community members to help identify what are the climate hazards of impacting their neighborhoods, what are the vulnerabilities, and as well as identifying potential solutions and strategies to implement. The task force has been a really important component in the development of the Yonkers Climate Action Plan, which I will touch on shortly. The Yonkers Climate Action Plan was launched in June of 2023. So our goal with this task force really has been to work with community members to identify all of the potential vulnerabilities and focus neighborhood by neighborhood, street by street on where are the areas of concern, and as well as what are the potential ways that we can advocate around these issues and promote strategies that will lead to action. And we do that through promoting interventions to address these issues through outreach and education. Our goal with this task force is to build resiliency as well as promote action and empowerment within the community. However, it's important to note that this hasn't, been a one entity effort. It has truly been a collective effort. We've partnered with key experts like CCRUN and professionals from CCRUN, professors from different universities, as well as an engineering firm that put together the Yonkers Climate Action Plan for the city of Yonkers, called Borough Happold, as well as with the city of Yonkers to move this forward. So I will walk you through a little bit of how we assembled this working group, this community working group. We recruited diverse members from the community. We were very clear that we wanted to have a coalition that really truly represented the community. And once we recruited those members of the community, we then engaged and trained them so that we were able to develop their skills and learn what are their skills that they can provide to this working group. So we organized and trained the task force members on specific topics such as the signs of extreme heat and urban heat islands. We also did an extreme heat walking tour with We Act for Environmental Justice, which is another environmental organization based in Harlem. And we invited guest speakers at our monthly meetings. Some of those guest speakers were Malgosia from Columbia University, as well as the director of street tree planting for New York City Parks, among others. So once our task force were armed with this knowledge and were able to understand a little bit of the science of these issues, we then transitioned into how do we, put all of this information into action, and how do we put this into practice as well. So first, the task force members, we did an exercise with them to identify their community's vulnerabilities to extreme heat and flooding specifically. And then this information was really important when we then moved on to working with the city and develop, our priorities as for what were some of those targeted actions that we wanted to see, as well as adaptation strategies for our community, the neighborhoods that we were focusing on. We also created a little bit of buzz, I would say, around the city. And we noticed that a lot of our local politicians were all of a sudden, talking about and really engaged and excited about, talking about climate change, urban heat islands, redlining, all of this language that normally environmental organizations or other organizations use. We noticed that it was really influencing how politicians spoke about this issue. And the mayor of Yonkers was one of them. So as I previously mentioned, the Yonkers Climate Action Plan was launched in June of 2023. And the task force played a very important role in the planning as well as the development process of the plan. The city, including the mayor, actively engage the community, including the task force, to provide feedback and input to the goals and the strategies, as well as the activities that were going to be part of the plan. We worked really closely with the Office of Sustainability for the mayor's office to make sure that this entire process included the people who, one, are most affected by the impacts of climate change, and two, have historically been left out of these types of decision-making processes. So the task force role in the Yonkers Climate Action Plan was very specific. They mainly focused on reviewing the climate action strategies that were being proposed as part of the plan, through an equity lens. So what this means is that they had discussions on how would the proposed strategies impact vulnerable populations, looking into, who are those vulnerable populations, and how specifically a goal around, let's just say, reducing greenhouse gas emissions will impact, let's just say, a sector of a vulnerable population, which would be seniors. And what would that be for them? And then the city organized a public workshop where it invited the wider public, including our task force, to look at these strategies that they were proposing and then vote and prioritize. And it's good to share that a lot of the strategies and the goals that the community voted on at this workshop actually did end up making it onto the plan. So what's next for us? A plan is a plan, but if you implement it, that's really what shows the impact and the action that we want to see. So thanks to CCRUN, we have been able to continue to run the task force for much longer than we actually anticipated. And what this grant has allowed us to do is to have access to key experts and to other best practices across the country on community-based action planning and what that looks like in other cities. And with all of that information and consultation and experience that we've gained through this process, what we are working on at the moment is to iterate that initial journey of creating the Climate Safe Yonkers Task Force onto a Task Force 2.0, which will have a similar structure with the regular monthly meetings, with regular meetings. This time it would be quarterly meetings, and engaging folks on working and pushing for implementation of the Yonkers Climate Action Plan. And we also launched a very specific themed-based working groups, one of them being our air quality working group, and the other, the tree canopy expansion working group, which would be surveying and mapping out what areas in Yonkers, which neighborhoods really would benefit from more trees and expanding their tree canopy coverage. So in order for us to really see what systems change look like in a process like the development of a climate action plan, we have to involve the community. So in order for us to see this process being carried out, it shows that you have to be very specific and localize your efforts, especially around climate action and climate adaptation. And this also serves as a reminder and hopefully as a model for other organizations and other cities of what inclusive climate action can look like. It's really important to involve and also engage all community members, especially the folks who are most vulnerable. And I'm a community engagement specialist, but I think involving the community can be transformative in any decision-making process. It shows that this process has some real weight to it, and it highlights that grassroots leadership is really important, as well as bridging the gap between policymakers and the public. And that's a little bit about us. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Candida. That was great. I invite folks to put any quick questions in the Q&A. I have a couple of quick questions for you. Just so you mentioned the first task force worked with the mayor's office of sustainability, and now you've got this task force 2.0. Do you think that the relationship between the task force and the city, the formal city government, is going to, have you essentially created a space where you'll have this permanent sort of advisory role on some of the city's actions, or was that a special thing that had to do with the production of the first plan?
I think it definitely has set a precedent to what could happen. And the task force, we assembled this task force at the same time that the city of Yonkers was putting together their climate action plan. It actually, we wouldn't plan on these two things to happen at the same time, but it happened that way. And I think it really showed what, the city can do when you involve the community and the public in a process such as this. So I think when we're looking into implementation, my hope is that the city does continue to engage our community members, especially the task force or any, related community group, in how they're going to be implementing their goals going forward. So I think this is like an opportunity for us to continue this discussion, and we hope that the city does continue to engage with us, and I'm sure they will.
And another quick question, you mentioned at one point in your presentation that you were going street by street to look at needs. I'm just curious, when you've got many needs, how did the task force or did your group have a sort of prioritization scheme that you used, or how did you sort of negotiate the need of sort of the multiple needs of the community and sort of limited set of resources that will go into implementation?
Yes, we did. And we focused mainly on efforts that were feasible around extreme heat and flooding issues, because those were the main concerns. A lot of the members of the task force live or grew up in neighborhoods that are current urban heat islands, and that is a real concern for a lot of the members. So we decided to focus our efforts mostly to address extreme heat and flooding, taking from members' personal experiences as well, and looking at the neighborhoods and the makeup of the neighborhood as well.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I'll hand it back over to you, Katie, to introduce the next speaker.
Thanks, Franco, and thanks, Candida. It was so great to hear about the work of Groundwork Hudson Valley. So with that, we'll move a little bit further down the coastline and welcome Groundwork Elizabeth, specifically Jonathan Phillips, who serves as their executive director. So welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you, Katie. I'm going to share my screen.
As you're pulling up, Jonathan, do the Groundworks, the different regional offices, do they collaborate, or are you all individual organizations?
Yeah, I'm proud to be part of the same organization. We're under an umbrella organization called Groundwork USA that Candida is. And I definitely wanted to encourage people after the session to go to groundworkusa.org. There's about 25 trusts around the entire country doing climate work. And it's important that we all understand that as a network, we can make changes locally in our community. Let me just start the slideshow. Okay, here we go. So my question to everybody first is, first of all, hi, my name is Jonathan Phillips. I'm the executive director of Groundwork Elizabeth, been here for 21 years, about to exit as the Groundwork executive director here locally. But I'm very passionate about this type of work, and I want to thank Noah and Rutgers for the opportunity to be able to pursue climate justice, especially in flooding here in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Where is Elizabeth, New Jersey? Well, we're near the water, like many of our other presenters today, all of our presenters today, right near New York City. We are right here. Hopefully you can see my arrow. And Elizabeth is right near Staten Island, right on the Arthur Kill. We are a city of a very diverse city, like Yonkers, 65% Latinx, 20% African American, 5% Asian. We've got about 150 type of people, different ethnicities here in Elizabeth, and we're very, very diverse. So my question for everybody before I really dig into this is, where were you on August 26th, between August 26th and September 4th, 2021? Think about that for a second. It may not be that hard if something impacted you like it did here in Elizabeth, New Jersey. We were literally flooded out in Hurricane Ida. And when the opportunity to work with Rutgers and NOAA came up, it was just something that really resonated with us. And we knew that flooding is a major issue here in Elizabeth, besides other climate issues. We are a red line community, like probably many of you are too. This is an older map from the 1930s. On the right side is Elizabeth. There's a lot of red there, a lot of environmental justice. In the 30s, there were different ethnicities there, but it's geographically, this area of Elizabeth, or most of the eastern section of Elizabeth, has really suffered with economic and social and climate issues. Like Groundwork USA and like Groundwork Yonkers, we're dedicated to pursuing a future where everybody's environment is green, healthy, and resilient. And we are also trying to undo legacies of poverty and discrimination. And we definitely focus on doing that by working on sustainability, and that's economic sustainability, social sustainability, and of course, environmental sustainability. Equity goes with that, and of course, environmental justice. Okay, that's not working. Try this. Here we go. So like I said, in August to September 2021, we were literally underwater. So on the left picture, you'll see a public housing project. If you look really closely, I probably should have made this a bigger slide. That's a rooftop there. And unfortunately, we lost 4 to 5 people during Hurricane Ida. They could not get out of their houses. We had 10 inches of water from Hurricane Ida in about an hour. And the systems, the sewer systems could not support it. And the water that came out of this was directly out of Trotter's Branch, which is a tributary of the Elizabeth River. You can see it at a drier state on the right side, but Trotter's Branch is actually the focus of what we did for this CCRUN grant. So what are our specific goals for the CCRUN project? Number one, to engage the community, and this will continue for many years to come. We develop flyers, posters, presentations. I'm going to share a link. We had a Rutgers student, a master's student. Her name was Jessica Partenneat, did a wonderful layout of the climate risks. I'm going to put that in the chat when I'm finished. You should definitely take a look at that. We then wanted to plan with the community, like Groundwork Yonkers or Groundwork Hudson Valley. They used to be called Groundwork Yonkers. We are working to build a climate engagement plan for the short term and, of course, for the long term, because you got to solve problems for the long term if you're going to make a difference. So we also had a specific demonstration project in mind. It's behind me. I'll show it to you in just a second. But again, that Trotter's Branch, it backed up, it flooded, it literally took people's lives. And we decided, you know what? We can do something about that. If we put our minds and efforts to it and engage a lot of people and partners, CCRUN was one of those partners. We actually had an Earth Day event there, which Katie Can came to 2 years ago. And Katie, I'm going to invite you back. You cannot believe the difference in that riverbed right now. So we spent the summer of 2023 mitigating some of those flooding issues by a major restoration project. We had NRCS, which is a division of the USDA, come in. They had a very specific, logical, well-defined engineering plan, which we followed. One of our staff members has the license to operate a backhoe. We had 50 youth working on this project with us. And the last part of the CCRUN tasks and goals were to look to the long term, to continue to not only do specific demonstration projects, but of course, open the eyes of the community and our policymakers like our mayor and our county and our state officials and even federal officials to continue to look at the issues we have with climate injustices here and try to do something about it. Some of the paperwork that came out of here, I just want to show you some of it. Everywhere we go with our community meetings, we pass this out. A lot of questions come up. People cannot believe the situation, how bad it is and how bad it can be. Again, with climate change, as we get warmer, the sea is getting closer and closer to rising more often and doing awful things to our community. Here's some of the youth that we use. We had 50 youth during the project last summer. We put in 50,000 people hours. We had, again, a lot of partners, which I'll show you. And CCRUN was, of course, one of them, Rutgers and NOAA. There's that backhoe. I mean, we were there. We were digging in the mud, let me tell you. And we were putting heavy-duty boulders down. We were scraping the bottom of that riverbank, all with permits, don't worry, with the DEP permitting, making sure that the water could flow more freely. And hopefully, in the past couple of storms, big storms, we've had some big ones here in New Jersey since then, it's held, and we're really happy about that. So now our community members are more aware of the flooding risk. We do have a climate safe task force, and I'll show you pictures in just a moment, but we also had a couple of surveys. We have our youth involved. We have a green team. We have a mayor's youth council, which is part of our youth initiatives, which actually meets with the mayor on a monthly basis. And they talk about issues that are concerning to them. One of them, of course, is flooding and our issues with climate injustice and climate resiliency. So some of the partners for this project, and again, CCRUN kind of helped tie it all together, and we thank you for that. Rutgers University, Kane University, which is a local state university, our city, our county, a local foundation called the New Jersey Conservation Foundation, the New Jersey Corporate Wetlands Restoration Partnership, which specializes in things like restoration of watersheds in urban areas, and many others, including Groundwork USA, which has been helping us. And I'm sure that Candida from Hudson Valley will agree with me. They've really led the way and helped us in many, many ways to work with these issues. This is one of our climate safe task force meetings. On the left side, you can see some of our posters inviting the community to it. And we wanted to make sure that we're not lecturing at these events, that we're listening. And you can't learn by talking, right? So we listened as much as we could. And we are developing a long-term climate strategy with members that have come to these community meetings. And finally, as you can see, that's the mayor all the way on the right. Having the voices of policymakers is really key to doing our work. We can talk all we want, unless we get legislation and heavy-duty investment by the corporate and public entities, we're not going to get things done. But we're really confident that we can get things done. Again, we appreciate CCRUN for the opportunity to do this work, and we vow to continue it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. We actually do have a question from John in the Q&A, and he's asking, given sea level rise, what are the long-term options for Trouters Branch?
So, yeah, thank you, John, for that. Long-term options are, we've worked on that riverbank. We have engineering plans. We can improve, there's some areas of overflow, which right now are still backing up. There are vernal pools there that actually can be utilized for demonstration and for education programs and projects over there too. And it's important that we don't just focus on one little tiny section of the Trouters Branch, but if we go on the other side of what's called North Avenue, there's Kane University is there with major impervious parking lots, and that side of the river hasn't been handled yet. And that's definitely option number 2 to continue long term.
So this is tidal, this water body.
This is a pilot program and there's a lot of work to be done. Yes.
No, I said tidal. Like, in other words, the tides come back into.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. It's a pilot, but it is a tidal. Yeah, definitely tidal.
Yep.
Elizabeth River is a tidal river. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. That was great.
You're welcome.
Handing it back over to Katie.
Thanks so much, Jonathan, and I'm looking forward to coming back to Trotters Branch to see all the work that you all have done in person, but it looks amazing. So thanks so much for sharing. All right, so our last project presentation of the evening is going to be Eastwick United. So I'd like to invite Ted Pickett, who serves as the board chair, and Richard Rourke, who's a partner at Olin Landscape Architecture and Urban Design, to join us to share their Eastwick's ongoing work. Thanks.
Thank you, Katie. As she said, I'm Ted Pickett. I'm the board chair of Eastwick United CDC. I've lived in Eastwick for 40 plus years. And flooding is the issue there. So this slide, in case people who don't know where Eastwick sits, as you can see, like Jonathan said and Elizabeth, we're surrounded by water. So Eastwick, this is Cobb's Creek, and to the left here is Darby Creek. And we sit at the bottom of where those two creeks meet. We began dealing with flooding since Hurricane Floyd in 1999 and continued through Storm Isaias in 2020. After Isaias, we began a community process of pressuring the city to react and assist the community to this regard. The Army Corps of Engineers was hired by the city and the water department. They had already been doing study and doing research in Eastwick, but had not yet at this time announced any conclusions. Our community process is all being led inside and around the community and has taken time to build alignment among all groups involved. Earlier this year, the Army Corps recommended that a levee be built in the residential area of the community where Cobb's Creek intersects. Although results show that the levee would greatly reduce flooding in our community, it appears that some of the water would travel to non-residential areas. There is work underway by the Army Corps to alleviate this as well. Soon there will be an independent feasibility study focusing on nature-based solutions, which claims to transfer water away from the area as well. The city, through the Office of Sustainability, is now thoroughly engaged and is working on funding to install temporary solutions for the flooding. As you can imagine, this has become an impressive scale involvement in the community, moving from no solutions to temporary solutions and working toward permanent solutions where possible. Remember also that the emphasis here is being put on the Eastwick community, on what the Eastwick community agrees upon as a probable solution, and concerned also with what makes sense. To be clear, although the situation can be cumbersome and time-consuming, it is clearly positive to have options and a host of participants working along with us toward meaningful and lasting solutions. I just want to bring your attention to the map here. As you can see at the top is right here, if you can see my arrow here. This is where the creek, this is where the levee is proposed to be built. And these are the creeks coming down here. So, and this is the Eastwick community behind this area here. Okay, thanks. And so this obviously this is where we want to prevent the water from the flood water from coming. There's also a land swap plan or option that we are looking at too, which is down in this area, which would make people safe for those people who, if we were to do the land swap. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to Richard, who will go further in the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Hello, everyone. I'm Richard Rourke. I'm a landscape architect and partner with Olin. You know, a lot of things stick in my head, you know, that Ted is related and that I've seen at community meetings. You know, just mentioning the, 1999, that's 25 years ago. There's been so much community advocacy about understanding both flooding problems and even on top of that, also pollution that was in the community as well. So there's a long history of environmental justice needs here. And there, for a very long time, the Eastwick community felt like they were just on their own, or they were just on their own. And it's been really, really hard community work that has actually begun to create its own gravity, that people are showing up and this good work is happening that Ted mentioned. But so much of it is dependent upon just years and years and years of commitment of the neighborhood having to unjustly advocate for itself to deal with these issues. Here you can see a lot of the work that we've been doing in partnership with Drexel and other organizations collaborating with the City of Philadelphia's Office of Sustainability, working under an umbrella that they've begun to establish to really create a coherent voice to serve the Eastwick community and the other parties that are interested, such as Hines National Wildlife Refuge. There's the airport, and and also being concerned about their neighbors that are adjacent to them. How will the impacts of flood protection or flood mitigation affect others? Really thinking broadly and about everyone. There's always something to learn in Eastwick, I would say. Oops, apologies. The flood hazards are both the creek flooding that from Darby and Cobbs Creek that Ted mentioned. There's also flood concerns with sea level rise from the Delaware River as those tidelands begin to experience sea level rise. Water will have a harder time to get out. It's the same problem really that's confronting the airport as well. So having a more comprehensive and thoughtful solution about communities in their entirety is really important. We met with communities. We had some meetings actually hosted through the Clean Air Council where we identified areas of flooding locally in the neighborhood, as well as thinking about this bigger picture that includes sea level rise and includes those conversations about those storms that you've heard in other presentations, Ida and Isaias. Some of the things that also from a long time of advocating, and then all of a sudden everybody's at your door, there's a lot of static in terms of trying to figure out how do you move forward with ideas that are going to work and that are going to be tested and are going to be really thoughtful. So sometimes this happens where everybody finally recognizes the problem, but they all jump in and it's not forward momentum. It's just a bunch of different voices, either starting over or not moving in a direction where everybody's on board. So part of that, and why it's been so important for the city to start to become an umbrella for that conversation, is that everybody in Eastwick pretty much knows what their flood risk is, and some members of the community have chronic repetitive flood risk now, and others in different geographies of the community have less. And that's part of understanding that communities aren't all one thing in terms of how they experience flood risk. Sometimes it's about blocking your street. Other times, when floodwaters come, and then in other situations, it's about getting your house flooded. But not everyone has the same experience in the neighborhood. There's also been a lot of meetings where they want to know how is the process moving forward, because these issues have been talked about for decades. And so it's been really important to attach ideas to funding initiatives that are going to happen. And this work through CCRUN has been very helpful in terms of really beginning to take ideas and give them some more concrete thinking behind them, so that we can understand how do we answer different voices in the community's questions, the ones that aren't experiencing flooding, but maybe at flood risk later, making sure that, that risk is clear, making sure that if we're doing one thing to protect some people in the community, that it doesn't have downstream effects that would be negative. So that led us to really work with 3 primary projects, although there's a fourth one that I'll talk about in a minute. But Ted mentioned the land swap, which, that's the concept of taking a property that you have now and exchanging it for a property that doesn't experience flood risk. And the idea with land swaps is, that it be a really local thing, that all the relationships that you have in a community really matter. That it matters to you socially, it matters to you economically, matters, who your friends and neighbors are, how you make a living. Everything is tied to that network of where you live. So it's a much more thoughtful version than just saying retreat, because there's a lot of reasons why people don't, and it really has to do with that fine fabric of relationships. The other thing is looking at novel ways of controlling water flow and drainage in communities. And one of the things that has come up, it's piloted in a number of places, such as Copenhagen, is the cloudburst street. And that's where water is really using the entire street profile as the drainage corridor. So instead of a typical crown street where the middle is the high point, the middle is actually the low point, and that allows the street to hold the volume of water that's coming through. And the idea with the cloudburst street is that it will basically be its own pipe through the neighborhood of capturing significant drainage to bring it out in a safe way and not flood areas that you don't want flooded. And then, as Ted mentioned, the levee is a pretty straightforward idea that people know, but it's looking at Cobb's Creek. Can we locate a levee that would prevent water from coming into the Eastwick community that gets that repeat flooding? But then the test is, but where does it go if it doesn't go into the community? Here's a kind of zoom in of the area. At the top, you can see this kind of area with all the contour lines. That's that landfill that's there, and that's where looking at the levee location could be. This area also experiences a significant flooding risk, particularly what's known as the planet streets, which are streets named after the planets, literally, like Mercury and Saturn. There's also some low-lying areas here. One is the Pepper School site, which is a fairly low-lying area that was this is a school district property that's been looked at as a potential place of managing stormwater. And then there's this elevated area here on the left side of the screen, which has been looked at as a place for land swap. So residents in this upper area could move over to this area if this was replatted and designed as a neighborhood. So it would be like for like, and it would be within the Eastwick neighborhood area. The other thing to point out is that this side, you know, experiences less flooding. So there's different opinions about what changes here would mean. And so people get concerned about those effects. And that's the dialogue that we need to have with everyone. This was one option that really tried to pull together many of the big ideas about how do we handle drainage over the long term. What can we do in terms of really adapting to the flood risks? So this proposed the levee, which assumed that some houses would need to be relocated. This was a kind of building max out of how many houses could be built at an elevation above the floodplain. And then here at the Pepper School site was a target location for a cloudburst street where overflow could be channeled to this basin and eventually outlet to a series of wetlands as part of the wetland refuge area connecting over to Hines. So these were, you know, ideas that were tested in terms of a hydrology model, and you know, just because they're functional in terms of mitigating floods, they would entail big decisions. The commitment of neighbors to relocate their houses for the positioning of the levee in this particular location. To support this cloudburst, the idea of carving out support a basin are things that we need to work out as a series of options. Can they be pulled apart to stand alone? How could they be done in terms of ways that would maximize the benefit to residents and give everyone assurance that it's a net positive? So, you know, for example, we're looking at, you know, well, what if what's the minimum amount of land swap area that would be cost effective? So, you know, but I guess to close it here is that we can't just, you know, create, you know, one big solution to work with communities. You have to work with the different voices, and you have to be prepared to run through a lot of options, because the first one is not just going to fit, but this kind of deep thinking and capacity is what I think residents all over our coastlines need in terms of adapting to sea level rise, and they certainly deserve it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Richard. It's great to see all that thinking that has gone into this, and looking forward to I know there's ongoing work that you guys are collaborating on, so looking forward to seeing that. There was a question in the chat, but I guess it's been resolved. Just other examples. I guess I have the cloudburst street idea. I'm just wondering, Ted, if there's been sort of community conversations about that concept, or was it sort of introduced as a part of this process as a new idea? You know, like to what extent do you think that cloudburst street concept actually is kind of emerging from what people are seeing, the way the water is actually moving in the community?
Yeah, Franco, it's kind of like part of a new concept here with, considering the other options that are on the table and have been discussed and researched. And it, excuse me, and it would allow water in some areas where it affects some of the homes there to be taken away from that part of it. And again, as Richard mentioned, there's not one size fits all, just because of where we're located and where the community, and what has happened in the community with previous floods. But yeah, there is talk about it, but again, it's all together with the other options. Yes.
Yes. Great. All right, so I guess I'll hand it back over to Katie to jumpstart the sort of general panel discussion. Thanks again, Ted and Richard.
Yes, echoing that. Thank you again, Ted and Richard. That was fun to hear a little bit more about what's happening in Eastwick. So I'd like to invite the other panelists to join us again with your videos on if you are available. And as Franco mentioned, I'm just going to jumpstart some of the questions with some really broad overview kind of topics that I'm really interested in just hearing your perspective on as you've worked on the CCR projects over the last year and a half or so, but also just kind of speaking to your broader work. And I think I want to get started thinking about the challenges. So I'm just broadly posing, I'm curious to hear your perspectives on what are some of the biggest challenges your community has faced in preparing for climate risks. And a little bit more specifically, this CCR program was a pilot small grants program. So it was just a little bit of seed funding to kind of help the organizations fill in some gaps, maybe prompt a new project or support an ongoing project, right? And so we know that there is a lot of challenges for organizations to kind of supplement or access sufficient funding to jumpstart their work. So if this is a challenge, I'm also interested in hearing a little bit more about that and any perspective that you might have for some of the university partners who might be on this call or federal partners that could potentially ease or fill some of those gaps. So whoever wants to get started can take that.
I think for Eastwick, probably making sure we cover as many of the options and alternatives in the community as we can. It's a wide area. It happens differently in certain areas, depending upon the storm and the issues that that it brings. And also trying to look out for the unknown and the uncertain, which happens, which is going to happen. So I think that's what probably our biggest challenge, and understanding all of those options and alternatives, and what's negative for this, maybe positive for that one, So that's kind of where we are.
I'd like to thank academia like Rutgers for starting the conversations too. It's important to have the questions asked, and Rutgers staff, the people that we worked with, like Robin, it wasn't you, Robin, in this case, but people that we worked with really helped us frame things out and really understand the larger challenges. One of the biggest challenges we have is the climate's changing quickly. We have to get in front of it before it's too late. So that's, it's a race against time. And it's a race against money too. Right now, there's a lot of money with the Inflation Reduction Act, but that may not happen forever. We're going to have to look for corporate partners, foundations, people that are really invested in the local community to make this continue to work.
Yeah, that's well said, Jonathan, I have to say.
Yes, just to build off of what Jonathan just said, I think that it's a race that we're facing right now, and it's a question of whether we'll be able to, how will we, whether, no, not whether, but how we're going to be able to win this race, and about like how we can manage to fund sufficient funding to be able to tackle these many issues that are rising out of just this problem. So I think that has been a challenge that we've seen as in Chelsea, for example, where it's not only the heat mitigation initiatives, but also the flooding that's going on and the air quality. And it's just like one thing after the other is just building up. So it's just in terms of capacity too, like how much can one organization do? It's a collective effort that we have to make, and how can we make that effort happen? I think it's a big challenge and questions that we are trying to answer in some ways.
I'd say that one of the challenges that I realized that, you know, in order for us to move something from a plan and into action, you need money, and you need money to one, do the projects that you set out to do, but also involve the folks that need to be involved. So whether that's staffing, or if we want to engage the community, how are you going to reward the community for their time and their knowledge and their skills that they're providing to organizations and to municipalities on how to go about these projects and address these issues. And I think it's really important to say, you know, funding can go a long way, especially when you create community capacity programs, like the task force is one of them. We paid our community members, and we want to continue to pay our community members to participate in these types of initiatives. I think it's important, you know, when you involve folks from vulnerable areas, many times they're not paid for their time. It's not easy to attend meetings when you don't have access to public transportation or you don't have a car. So I think it's important to, you know, fund these initiatives. But also to add to that is there's a lack of information at a city level. And I've noticed this mainly also in New York City and for Yonkers when it comes to accessing information around climate emergencies like heat waves and air quality, you know, wildfires. Folks don't know where are their cooling centers. They also don't perhaps receive an alert that's, you know, fast enough. And the infrastructure for these systems to be put in place also costs a lot of money and a lot of resources. And they also need to be prioritized, you know, included into budget, but also work with other nonprofits and other organizations to put these infrastructure in place.
Thanks all. Yes, that on that last point, Candida, the importance of a network, I think is huge, and a lot of you touched on that as well. So that was one thing we were hoping to come out of this grant, is to form a smaller network of just the folks that are here together, and hopefully we can carry this through into our future work and continue these partnerships. So I see questions rolling in on the chat, and I encourage folks to keep sticking questions into the Q&A, excuse me, not the chat. But I just want to ask one more question before we move on to the general audience questions. And it's kind of picking up on some of the things that Jonathan, I think you introduced this idea of a race, and Jack, you picked up on this as well. There's kind of a tension when we're talking about climate adaptation and the urgency of action. Communities need interventions, they need action right now to face the risks that are ongoing. But that kind of stands in contrast to a lot of the things that we talk about of the key and the imperative to kind of have really careful and long-lasting, trusting relationships that are built between community members and policymakers, for instance, and just the need for that really, really careful engagement. So I'm just hoping to hear a little bit more from each of you on this tension maybe between urgency and careful engagement. And what are some of the ways your organizations are thinking about engaging with different members of your community, different groups across space. As Ted mentioned, it's a big area. There's a lot of concerns, right? And sometimes those are competing. And as you're thinking about these, how are you kind of keeping equity at the forefront of these engagement efforts?
Guess I'll start off again. So nothing speaks more urgently than having a flooded city and having really a disaster. I think, Candida, you started talking about disasters, and that precipitates a lot of need, a lot of attention. And as horrible as it is, it's probably going to get worse. Everybody here is on a coastal community. Everybody's going to feel the effects of this. And how do we galvanize not only the people that are affected? And I like that idea, by the way, about paying your climate safe people, Candida, but getting our policymakers so involved that there's no way but yes to go.
I would have to agree with John on that. I think, making sure that you are engaging your local government in these initiatives, but also working with a variety of stakeholders. When we assembled the task force, we really tried to capture folks from different, like the unusual suspects, and partner up with them so that we were representing a wide range of folks from the community. So we partnered up with artists, business owners, leads from other organizations, community-based organizations, business improvement districts, and so on, because we wanted everyone to be part of this discussion and of this process. And I think, to John's point, you have to involve your local government. And if they don't want to be involved, well, they have to be involved. There's no option. You have to get these things done. The urgency is there. We're going to continue seeing more of this. And I think one way for us to ensure is to include this in the processes early on, and not just as an afterthought.
I think everything everybody said is right on. In terms of making decisions, they have to be made at the speed of trust for the community, and they have to be also the other timeline to wait on is positioning for these big projects that either require finding ways to totally address like bad air quality and heat island effect in communities, or holistically address flooding issues. They're big capital problems in terms of the amount of money that needs to be invested, just like they're big capital problems in terms of affordable housing, and they're all tied together. Sometimes I think that if we just focus on a climate change issue, the reason why the climate change issue is there is actually tied to the lack of planning for communities holistically across the board. Planning has been stuck in places where it's focused on economic development, but not really holistically on community and the economy for those at large. And at a certain point, our problems are a political problem, and there's a lot of power in community organizing that it's the only way Eastwick got into a place where people were started to offer solutions.
To build off of what everyone was saying, just wanted to say that I think everyone feels the tension already, at least in Chelsea, about the climate and how it's advancing and it's impacting everyone negatively. And to that point, I feel like there is that sense of wanting to do something, but what we've discovered is that people have the initiative and they have the willingness to put the time. Even though this is a community that's been burdened for so long, they want to do something about it, but sometimes they're not really much resources that can tell them what they can do. And so that's why we hold different events and hearing sessions where we listen to what they want to see reflected in the community, what's being impacting them, and just forming that connection with the community has been really important, because our local government listens to the community, and so that's such an important aspect of our relationship with the government and the local government and the community as well. Is just having that, the three components. And one of the things that you mentioned is how do we keep equity in this topic? And I think that we're always trying to keep in mind that this is a community that's been burdened for so long. And how are these resources, how are these different campaigns happening in the city? How are they impacting this community? And is this what they want to see? Is this what it's going to benefit them? Since it's basically they've been affected by so many other issues, not only environmental, but socially as well. And I think it's just a collaboration between the whole city and an effort that we have to make together.
Yeah, resources clearly are extremely important. And in Philadelphia, I have to say, and I'm going to give credit where credit is due, the Office of Sustainability certainly now, not that they didn't always exist, so I'm not blaming them for what happened in the past, but clearly have the community engaged. There are all kinds of things that they do. They provide lots of information. We have lots of meetings, and I mean lots of meetings where information is discussed, bringing the community together on projects over the span of where Eastwick exists is also important. And I have to tell you that we meet a lot. Okay, so much so that my wife says, "Why are you on another meeting?" You know. I mean, I got to ad lib there, but yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah.
Thanks so much, all, and thanks, Ted, especially for sharing your time, continuing with us today in this meeting, yet another. But we really appreciate all these insights. All right, so I'm going to turn to some of the questions that have come up from the audience. So the first one we have from Harold. All of the projects, did anyone form a community land trust? Just from my kind of oversight, like overview of the CCR project specifically, what we funded from CCRUN, I don't believe that anything went into a community land trust, but I did want to just open that up if your organizations are kind of working on that in other spaces.
We did not.
No, not here. So, but thanks, Harold. I think that's a great question, and a lot of interesting work I know is happening on that in the region. So next we'll turn to this question from John. All of these are great examples and are in communities adjacent to large institutional actors and landowners with their own vulnerabilities and resources. For example, ports, airports, distribution centers, utilities, universities, etc. How are these community-based initiatives getting the attention of those bigger neighbors?
Yeah, I just want to say to John, we're all of those. We've got, we're part of the port area of New York and New Jersey, Port Authority area. And we've actually got the ear of the sustainability department from the Port Authority right now. So it's going to be a long haul, but they actually have a large scale sustainability plan for at least reducing diesel particulates, which will reduce some of the heat problems as well. So, and because we're on the water, they take care of the water as well. They've got to be part of the solution. We have Newark Liberty Airport, Terminal A, in case you've ever flown into Elizabeth, is actually in Elizabeth. Yes, a giant airport. You talk about a giant heat island. Usually one of the hottest cities in New Jersey is Newark. They always take the heat index or the temperature of the hottest area in New Jersey. It's always Newark Airport. So that's a heat island, and that's a good question there, John. Distribution centers, and we have one of the largest outlet malls in the Northeast here, the Mills at Jersey Gardens, which is a giant heat island parking lot. They did put solar panels on the top there, but it just generates so much heat, and they actually literally drained the swamp to build it, so that doesn't help things as well. So those partners have got to be part of the solution. That's a little harder to do than to ask the question. So I'll just turn it over to my fellow CCRUN folks to see how they're doing with that one.
Yeah, I just want to build on of this being a part, like this is a good question, and a good approach that we've been trying is working in collaboration with these industries rather than working against them. An example of this is quite some years ago, we worked with a distribution center that had really large diesel spewing trucks, and we worked along with them. So now they have sorry, I was reading the question. So they now have electric vehicles, trucks, to work. So it's been an effort of collaboration and just having conversations, even though it can be tough and it can be really difficult to get to an agreement, but I think it's good tension, yes.
I would say in Eastwick, the Army Corps of Engineers is providing the flood protection for the airport, at least leading the studies on that. And it's also come into managing the flood risk for Eastwick with the studies along Cobbs Creek that Ted mentioned. So that's a federal actor that's begun to bridge across the territories. And then there's also, the Hines National Wildlife Refuge is also, connected between the airport and Eastwick, and they're looking for nature-based solutions to solve problems as well. So there's been some research and energy directed to there to see if we can move beyond typical structural solutions where we can. So there's definitely that kind of collaboration happening. And then as Ted mentioned, the Office of Sustainability has, realized that they're doing their own kind of organizing to make sure that the other parts of the city are planning with Eastwick together.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Yes, it was actually, we saw on the map, a lot of the communities in this program are really, really nearby the ports and the airports. So I think, yeah, this is a really important question. And thanks all for your insight on the important work you're doing with these partners. So I want to move on to a question from Carl, who's focusing in on the coalitions and the partnerships. And we kind of touched on this a little bit, but just wanted to open the floor if folks have any other really important partnerships or networks that you want to shout out or think that need to be developed further to advance your work.
Well, I'll just quickly give a shout out to the CCRUN partner for allowing us to work with folks, especially professors from Columbia University. But I think it highlights the importance of working with academia, because a lot of these issues require data and research. And that's a strong area where academia can step in and provide that. So we welcome, to extend that network and that partnership with a variety of different institutions, educational institutions, so that we can build on our data and our research capacities as well.
Yeah. And to that, I would certainly be remiss if I didn't mention the gentleman in the far right-hand corner with the pink shirt on at Drexel University. We're like family. They've much help provided, advice. And I got distracted for a minute, and I had to say this. Franco, you sent me a text earlier about practice session. I don't know where I was. I might have been moving my car or something, but I didn't see that. And I and I just saw it now. I apologize. Uh, and Richard has been fantastic. Not only he meets with groups within Eastwick, not necessarily only Eastwick United, but other groups within the community as well. And both of these gentlemen and their respective university and their business are on this platform, umbrella platform with the city of Philadelphia under the Office of Sustainability as well. So they get to know what's needed, how we act, how the community thinks, and they work to that regard. So thank you guys.
I'll just say on behalf of the sort of academic partners, it's also very rewarding to work with folks like Ted, because we in universities can sit and do all the studies that we want and publish all the papers that we want. And never, if you do that type of research, your impact on sort of frontline issues like the ones we've been talking about is going to be minimal, I will say. Whereas through partnerships and collaborations, there's a greater chance that some of your science, whatever it is, social science, natural science, applied science, design sciences, right, can actually be put to work. And that makes everything more rewarding. So, I think the feelings are mutual, that the collaboration, is very rewarding from the academic side as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, again, Rutgers, a grad student, did our ArcGIS study. I did put it in the chat before. If you have a chance, please look at it. And what's good about this is academia can be academic, if you know what I mean, but she put this in a way that our community who we're trying to reach out to can understand it. So that's really important.
Yes, I just would like to say just a shout out to academia and researchers and other organizations who put up time to do to help us draft different projects such as the Boston Landscape Architects and such people who are great at just building more momentum, I guess.
All for those responses. Yeah, I think coalitions and continuing to build these connections are going to be key. So I have a question from Charlie. Based on the multiple hazards and risks, as well as historical injustices each of your communities face, I wonder if you could expand on what resilience and being resilient means in each of your communities.
Let me try to answer that. One of the questions that was on the email you sent out, Katie, was what is the one thing that makes you hopeful as your community prepares to face climate change in the future? Climate change future. In Eastwick, it is without a doubt resilience. This community, there's some people in this community who have been flooded 7 or 8 times, depending upon where they live. And believe me, as a community and specifically those people, they get up, they can't shake themselves off, so they dry themselves off, and they continue to do what needs to be done to fight for the community, despite the challenges and issues and things that they're facing, with the flooding and whatnot, and just keep on going. And just will not take no for an answer, does not want to move from where we are. It's a fantastic area to live. And even though we had little to do with where our houses are and what, the challenges in terms of creeks and things like that, how close they were to where we live, nobody knew that. And clearly we didn't know about climate change, but clearly resilience is the issue here.
Similarly,
that answers your question, yeah.
Similarly, I will build on, I think the people of Chelsea show a lot of resilience. And for us, that means, as Ted was mentioning, just if your house gets flooded, just you dry yourself and you wake up the next morning and figure a way to make it work. And I think that also the people who live in Chelsea are really invested in being part of conversations that take place whenever so for example, if there's a hearing about flooding and they know someone who has been through that experience, or they themselves have been through that experience, the fact of showing up and advocating for changes that they want to see, I think it's an example of how resilient they are, because they're really tough. Community members are really tough, and I'm happy to see that this is also something that we are seeing in other communities, because I think that it's such an inspiring thing to see, just people not giving up, and even in the face of all these injustices and inequity, rather than staying just sit down still and not doing anything. I see people waking up really early every morning and just going about their days and like trying to make the city a better place. And I think that's a good example of how resilient the city of Chelsea is.
Yeah, so long term, in terms of resilience, we think everybody here has no, sorry, they're trying to pick up the garbage here, which is everyone has the right to breathe clean air. Everyone has the right to have a cool neighborhood. Everyone has the right to have a safe environment. And all of our work in resiliency is really, environmental justice to me is a fancy word for saying we need really good quality of life for everyone, regardless of where they live, regardless of who they are. So we all are just, I mean, the Groundwork Network is trying to do that. I can tell you, I'm sure they're doing it in Hudson Valley, and you're doing it, Jack, and you're doing it, Ted and Richard, and we've got to just keep doing it.
Right.
I think everyone has pretty much covered it, but I would iterate what John said, and is to ensure that everyone has a good quality of life, and that they have the resources to live out that good quality of life.
Thanks all. I think the word resilience and resilient people get kind of thrown around. It's like a buzzword, but I think adding a lot of these layers to understand the nuances of what it means to be resilient is really helpful. All right, so we have a question about the Army Corps. Have any of the groups worked with the Army Corps to potentially implement nature-based solutions? I know in Eastwick, you all have a pretty close relationship with the Army Corps, a lot of work going on there. I don't know if you want to start, and if the other groups also have anything to add, keep it open.
The Army Corps hasn't introduced the nature-based solutions. However, John Hines Wildlife Refuge, which is down the road from here, has, and that's what one of the feasibility studies that I mentioned earlier, that's who's sponsoring one of the feasibility studies that I mentioned earlier in the nature-based solutions, as a nature-based solution. But and unless Franco and Richard, if you know more about that with the Army Corps and nature-based, I'm not aware of.
Yeah, I know the Army Corps of Engineers is talking about nature-based solutions as sort of dressing on levees. That's been part of it. But I don't know that they've been part of the discussion about nature-based solutions in Eastwick per se. I think that's been more led by Hines, like you said.
Right.
That's right. Not in Eastwick, and it's complex. Nature-based solutions, a lot of times, they play a major role, the only role really, in terms of water quality, which is super critically important too. In terms of nature-based solutions to impact the totality of the watershed through regreening and infiltration projects, winds up a scale of change issue to they become massive projects in and of themselves to be able to affect communities that are literally at the bottom of the watershed. But what we've done and on other projects, we did have a nature-based solution project where we naturalized the channel of Mill Creek in Stamford, Connecticut, because there was enough room to open up the watershed and to get the river out of the channel, the concrete culvert that it was in. So the Army Corps is really interested in those cases where they realize that they want to change as well in terms of the methods that they use. But communities that are at the bottom of watersheds where all the water is literally coalescing, it's not, the problem starts at the top of the watershed, and that's part of the dynamic. So addressing the needs of the coastal communities frequently needs at least a combination of structural solutions, and I don't want to pretend that that's not the case.
I'm going to talk about an Army Corps of Solutions project that went kind of bad, and then I'm going to bring up one that might be applicable to this. The Elizabeth River flooded. The entire river used to flood, not only the Trotters Branch. So the Army Corps of Engineers came in here and channelized a portion of it. People lost the entire idea of what a river was, and they built a bunch of berms too. What Groundwork Elizabeth was able to do is bring people closer to the water. This is not exactly answering your question, but putting a river trail in to at least bring people closer to the water. An area that were an Army Corps of Engineers project, and I'm not sure this is an Army Corps project, but whatever it is, it really worked. There's a nature-based solution. In my sister trust, Hudson Valley, you folks, Candida, this is before you got there, but I'm sure you're definitely aware, you daylighted a channelized section of the Sawmill River successfully. And I think it's a great example for people to see.
Yeah, I was actually just including the link to the story of that in the chat. Thanks. So about, I would say a little over 20 years ago, the project that launched Groundwork Yonkers, which is now Groundwork Hudson Valley, was the daylighting of the Sawmill River, which it was a section in downtown Yonkers that led into the Hudson River in front of the Metro North station in this area of Yonkers. It used to be a parking lot for many years. It used to be many different things. It was paved over, and then the Army Corps of Engineers, along with many partners, uncovered that area and brought the river back and created a park, which is now called the Daylighting Park, creating, which helps for flood mitigation, but also for as a urban heat island mitigation in this particular area. So that is a very successful project, which we did many, many years ago, well before my time. And I included the story to that in the chat.
Thanks, everyone. And I just wanted to say we're approaching the end. So I just wanted to thank everybody so much for being here with us and sharing the stories of your work. It's just so inspiring to hear all these amazing projects. And we're so happy that we could join and network with you and kind of form these connections. So I just wanted to give folks on the panel, if you have any closing thoughts. I know Ted mentioned some sparks of hope, maybe leaving folks on an optimistic end. If you have anything else to share, just want to leave the floor open, and then we'll wrap up and say goodbyes.
Can I just do one intervention just to say thank you to Katie for the past couple of years? And this was a real effort, and I'm just so proud of the work that everyone has done. It's amazing, and just seeing it all kind of coming to life. So I just had just a shout out to Katie for the organizing and keeping all the, keeping everything moving forward.
Yeah, I want to echo that. I mean, Katie, you masterfully kept this going, and And I think, you know, this is sort of a testament also to, I guess, the vision that you put out first, Robin, about doing this program, the fact that through, relatively small amounts of money, but strategically placed, we can generate these kinds of community scale improvements that are really what this work is all about, right? It starts there and then we scale it up, right? We learn from these case studies, these examples, these experiences, and then that gives more people hope, and it creates sort of strategies that we can replicate and do in other places. So shout out to you as well. And I think, I don't know, is CCRUN able to continue this? I should know this, but I don't know.
We would love to run another one, and I think this is in a way a proof of concept that it's really meaningful, and it is like a small intervention, but it just has that power. And I've just so appreciated everyone's comments about the value of the collaboration and what it how much better research is and how much better community-based climate work is when you have this collaborative capacity happening. So I'm really hopeful that we can do another round.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, thanks,
thank you, Katie. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ted.
No, I was just going to say thank you, Katie. I certainly appreciate your persistence. You've done a great job here, and thank you for not chopping my head off by getting that information so late to you that you asked for. I would have gotten 30 emails from others. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? You know what I mean? But thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely. The important thing is that you're all here. So this worked out well. So please stay involved in CCRUN. We have these webinars the first Wednesday of every month. And you are now, I'm assuming, Nikki, everyone here is now on our mailing list, so you'll hear about it, but please stay connected to us and join us next month. And we look forward to continuing the conversation. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard.